Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the Historathon book tag, the Ancient Cultures edition. So this tag was created by Jack over at the Rambling Raconteur. His channel is great. I recommend that you subscribe to it if you haven't already. Of course, his information will be below. And he made this tag sort of to go along with Historathon. Historathon 2023, which is a year-long event, reading event, celebrating nonfiction history. I'm spearheading the event. I'm being followed by some great co-hosts along with this, and also some amazing participants so far. I've been really happy with how everybody has received the event and participated. It's been great so far. And he made this fun tag to go along with the first quarter of the event. So we have divided the year up into 4 different time periods. So from January to March, we are looking at prehistory up to 500 CE or AD 500, whichever one you prefer to say. And I think he has plans to make a tag for the other quarters as well. But this one, of course, is focused on ancient history. And these are just prompts about reading. So let's begin. His first prompt is the Romans. What books, writers, or genres are your bread and circus? So bread and circus, he's referring to the ancient Rome, of course. If you provide the people with bread and circuses, they won't necessarily pay attention to politics. Keep them happy, keep them distracted. So I think what he's asking is, what do we read to kind of escape, to forget about things? And I would say that my bread and circus would essentially be Star Trek novels. I don't usually read to get away, to escape, but when I do, it's in the summer. And that's when I dive into the geekiness that is Star Trek fiction. Some of it good, some of it not so good. But whatever, I get to explore my favorite fictional worlds. And just, well, you can't see it because it's over off to the side of me. I'll show some footage here so you can see it. I do have a bookcase just filled with Star Trek books. And every summer, to celebrate summer, I start pulling books off that shelf and reading. So yes, that's kind of like my equivalent of the light summer beach read. That would be Star Trek books. So that's my bread and circuses. The second one, the Sumerians. What is a work you read many years ago but still appreciate? I have to say, I think some other people might have said this in their responses, but The Hobbit. This is the copy that I read when I was young. But yeah, I still kind of get the warm and fuzzies whenever I start reading through this. I do hope to go through this with my son at some point soon. But yeah, I loved it when I was younger. I read it again when I was like in my 20s. I loved it, and thumbing through it again, still love this thing. But yeah, it's a comfort food sort of book. So The Hobbit. 3, the Shang. What is your favorite non-example to pillory? And by this, I think what he means is, what book do we like to publicly lambast, to publicly shame? I think the one for me, I guess, it's not that I like to publicly shame it, it's just, I still get PTSD thinking about having read this book. And that would be Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I hated that book, incredibly hated it. I had read it back in the early 2000s when the neocons, these kind of, more right-wing businessmen were kind of touting objectivism and Ayn Rand, and it was starting to influence public policy as well, and economic policy. So I wanted to understand it more. So I picked up Atlas Shrugged, and one of the ones that they quote all the time, John Galt and stuff. So I wanted to understand it, and that's why I pushed through it to read it, so I could understand it and kind of have a better understanding of what was going on politically inside the country. And it was just a tremendously bad book. It's basically just a showcase for her philosophy. Those who agree with her philosophy are the good guys. Those who don't are bad. And if I remember correctly, she even has a passage where a train derails and kills everybody, and she totally says that like children die on this train. But then she also says that they voted for policies that made the trains not so good, so they kind of deserved it. It was just, a terribly written book as far as I'm concerned. I know that there are some people who like it, and there are some people whose opinions I respect who said that they read it and they didn't mind it at all. But I disagree. So yes, I hated that book. 4. Early Basketmaker. Name an early work that points the way to later monuments. So these aren't always the kind of questions that I can easily answer. So when I was looking at my bookshelves, this is what I came up with. Vladimir Nabokov's The Enchanter and Lolita. So The Enchanter is a work that he wrote when he was in Paris around 1939 or 1940. He was a Russian immigrant living in Paris, and he wrote in Russian this novella, or almost like a novelette. I mean, it's very short, but it's about, you know, an adult male's obsession with prepubescent girls, and you know, there are definitely shades of Lolita in here, although Lolita is, you know, far more rich of a novel. This is very short, but I did still love the writing in this. And so these are the seeds that ended up becoming Lolita, which he published, what was this, I don't remember exactly what year this was, 1955, okay? So 1955, and then I think this is the kind of thing, if I remember correctly, he kind of put it in a drawer and forgot about it, and then when he took it out again years later, he realized it was kind of a little bit better than he had remembered, so it got published in English. So that's my answer. The Enchanter as a precursor to Lolita. Next, the Babylonians. What book did you expect to be impenetrable, but found easy to sink into? There have been, I guess, some things like economic histories I'm always intimidated by, but they can usually end up, they end up being much easier to grasp than I expect them to, because I'm not an economics type of person. But more recently, I would say something like Latin. I had decided last year that I wanted to finally learn how to read Latin. I'm not so concerned about speaking it, but I do want to be able to read some, at least at a basic, maybe early intermediate level. So I decided to make a commitment, and I bought this, Lingua Latina. This entire book is written in Latin. The only stuff that's in English in here is the copyright information. That's it. Everything else is in Latin. And it's designed to lead you through the language. So each chapter gets progressively more complex with the Latin. It introduces you to new vocabulary, new grammatical rules, and Latin is just filled with ridiculous grammatical rules. Impenetrable, I knew that it was going to be difficult. However, I have been pleasantly surprised by how doable it ends up being. I tackle a chapter a week. I have a study buddy and who also reads the same chapter. And we have some supplementary material that goes along with it too, and companion books. So we kind of dedicate a week to a chapter, and we check in on the weekends and talk about our thoughts, the things that we struggled with, some things we noticed. We're learning Roman history along the way, so it's been a lot of fun. We're 15 chapters in now. Still going through. We're almost halfway through this work. We plan to finish in, I think, July is when we're scheduled to finish this book. But it's been great. Yeah, I knew that was going to be difficult, and it's still, it's not easy all the time, but it is amazing how much, just by this practice, and because I only have a few hours to dedicate every week. It's not like I'm doing every day, but I'll be reading through this, and I'll realize I've read like a whole paragraph and not had to look anything up, and I've just, absorbed it all and, gotten the gist of it. Even if I don't understand every grammatical rule necessarily, I'm understanding what's being read, or what's been written, what I am reading. So yeah, that would be my answer for this. Fear that it would be impenetrable and undoable, but no, I'm having fun with it, and it is doable. Let me see, the next one, the Persians. How do you organize your bookshelves? So behind me, what you see is basically my TBR. These are unread books, as well as those boxes that are in there. They're not in any real particular order. Like as I start taking things out, I'll put things next to each other for the most part that go next to each other, but I'm not overly concerned by the organization here. Downstairs, where the library is, that's where I put the books that I'm done with, that I finished. The ones that I plan on keeping, at least for a short time. Keep for now. If I run out of room on our shelf, maybe I'll get rid of it, but for now, I'll keep it. And my fiction section, I have in alphabetical order, according to author last name. My history section is in chronological order, based on the time period that's being written about. I have a Star Trek bookshelf that kind of is organized by the different iterations of Star Trek. And then within that, they're organized by publication date. I have a horror cabinet. I said history wrong in a previous video. A horror cabinet where on the top I have horror studies, so scholarly works looking at history, and that's kind of roughly in chronological order depending on what horrors they're talking about. Is it like, Gothic? Is it slasher films? So that kind of depends on the order there. And then the lower half of the bookcase is Gothic fiction, and that is by alphabetical order, author, last name. And then I have another bookcase, which is nonfiction. General nonfiction that isn't history. So I've got like a shelf for science, I've got a shelf for religious studies, shelf for travel writing, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's how I organize my books. Let me see the next one. Ishango, bone of Middle Stone Age, Central Africa. That's a mouthful. How does the length of a work affect your reading experience? I don't generally gravitate towards thick books. I do like the satisfaction of finishing books. So I tend to like medium-sized books because at least it gives me a good chunk of information, with shorter works kind of interspersed in between. When I do read a longer work, and I do read them, I don't totally avoid them, I just don't gravitate towards them. When I do read them, I do try to get them done kind of as soon as possible. I push through them. And that's because I just kind of want to keep getting to other things, and I want the satisfaction of putting it in that finished shelf. So yeah, that it does sort of affect my commitment or my likelihood that I am going to go grab a book. If it's a big chunker, it better be a real big subject that I'm going to like. Next one, the Huns. How do you read or pack books while traveling? Well, I don't have an e-reader, so I'm still very old-fashioned in that way. If I'm traveling to a destination, we're talking like, vacation, or I'm traveling to go see things, I'll usually have a book or two about the destination. And I usually use my jeans, my folded jeans, to protect the books. I put them in there, and then I have them in the luggage so they don't move around, and they're usually really well protected there. And I usually have a book or two that is just for downtime, and it's not always related to the topic or the place that I'm at. If I'm on vacation, I make a distinction between vacation and traveling. Vacation is relaxation. That's like if I'm going on a cruise, or if it's going to be like a beach destination, which I'm not geared towards necessarily. I like traveling. If it's a vacation, then I will often bring fiction along with me. If I am traveling, so traveling is work. Traveling is what I consider, you basically get up as early as you can, and you're on the move all the time. Like you're in a foreign city or something like that, and you're constantly seeing things. By the end of the day, you're exhausted and just ready to crash. That's not a vacation to me. That's traveling, and that's what I love to do. I love traveling. If I'm traveling, I often will bring different nonfiction works. Especially one of the things I was bringing along for a long time to destinations was Carl Sagan books. I wanted a nonfiction book that would kind of continually feed my wonder of the world, of the planet, as I'm going around, and just appreciate the existence. Those are the kind of things that I look for. So yeah, just kind of cool nonfiction books that don't necessarily have to be related to the place that I'm at. The next one is the Aurignacian Culture. I'm sorry, Jack, I don't know if I'm saying this right. What are your favorite pop culture references to ancient cultures? So I do have, he showed some board games. I do have a couple themed board games, but they don't quite fit into this as well. Like I played Rise of Augustus, which is kind of like Gamers Bingo. I play Pandemic, the Fall of Rome version, so it's Roman themed. You're trying to save the empire, if I remember correctly. So those are the kind of games that I'll play sometimes, but they're not strongly attached to the theme. They've kind of been pasted on the mechanics. There are two songs. Jack did talk about a song of his that he likes, or a song that he likes. I think it was from Steely Dan or something. So I've got two songs I'll talk about. The first one is Susie and the Banshees, Cities in Dust. So yeah, that's a classic song for me. I love that song, and it's all about Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius erupting and destroying the city. I think that one's a lot of fun. And another one for me would be Blacklight Burns, the song Mesopotamia. So Blacklight Burns is the side project. I don't think he's doing it anymore, unfortunately, of Wes Borland, who is the guitarist for Limp Bizkit. And I've never been a Limp Bizkit fan. I just don't like Limp Bizkit. But I've always been intrigued by Wes Borland. I think that he's genuinely talented. He's actually a really good painter as well. And he had a side project, a solo project called Blacklight Burns, and released some albums. That first album especially was really good. It was excellent. I remember going to see him at concert during that tour from that first album. We saw him in, I think we went to Hartford, Connecticut. And we saw him there. And I kind of felt bad for him because there was an opening act and the place was jammed. And I didn't really like the opening act. I thought it was terrible. Me and my friend, we did not like the band and the place was filled. So we kind of stepped outside and there was another guy out there having a cigarette. And all he said to us is like, anybody else smell the feces coming out of those speakers? So he also wasn't a fan of the music. So we were just kind of waiting for that to finish. And then when that opening act finished, the place like just cleared out. We just saw tons of people leaving. And we're like, where's everybody going? Like Blacklight Burns hasn't played yet. They're the headliner. And we went back in, there was maybe like 30 of us left. That's it. The place had mostly cleared out, and this is like standing room type of venue. So it was just kind of like, a couple dozen of us milling around still. But Wes Borland still went out on stage and, the band, and he put on an awesome show, just for us. And then right when the concert was over, he just yelled, "Let's hang out." And he just jumped off the stage and came out and just hung out with us and talked with everybody. So, I gave him a lot of credit for that. And that was an album, like I said, that I really, really liked. And the first track is called Mesopotamia. And I always interpreted the song as relating to the Iraq War. But he's drawing upon its ancient history for that song. So I'll leave links to both those songs down below if you want to check those out. And then the last thing is the Minoans establish trade routes and tag some booktubers. So once again, I'm late with this sort of thing. I don't get tags in timely manners. So I apologize to those people who tagged me. So I didn't keep track of exactly who did this. So I am going to tag David Wiley because he had tagged me in a tag that he created, an original tag that I will get to as soon as I can. But I'm going to tag him in this. I also want to tag Brandy, the Book Eclectic. So yeah, those two, I think they might be a good fit for this. So yeah, anyhow, that's it. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you are also joining along in Historathon. Even if you read one nonfiction history book, that would be great. And if you do, please tell us about it. All right. As always, thank you, Booktube.